I never thought my own home could become a prison. My name is Lydia Grant, and my daughter-in-law locked me in the basement. 3 long days in darkness with no food, no sunlight, and no one to hear my cries. The worst part? My son thought I had abandoned him. But I survived, and what I went through changed everything. This is the story of betrayal, courage, and finding light even when the people you love the most try to erase you.
My daughter-in-law locked me in the basement, and my son thought I ran away. My name is Lydia Grant, and I am 69 years old. People think old age is quiet. They imagine rocking chairs, warm tea, and peaceful afternoons. But for me, old age came with locked doors, lies, and a darkness I never imagined I would face inside my own family. The night my daughter-in-law locked me in the basement, my son believed I had walked away from him forever. And that hurt more than the cold floor beneath my feet. I raised my son Ethan Grant alone. His father died when Ethan was just 5 years old. A drunk driver ran a red light and took my husband from us in a single blink of time. From that day forward, I became mother and father both. I worked as a hospital cleaner for over 30 years. My hands were always raw from chemicals. My back bent early from pushing heavy carts down long, white hallways. But every paycheck went to Ethan. New shoes for school, warm coats for winter, books instead of toys. Every night I tucked him in and said, "God still has plans for us, my boy." And he would smile and say, "As long as you're with me, Mama." Those words kept me alive. Ethan grew into a good man. He studied engineering, moved to the city, and eventually married a woman named Caroline. Caroline was beautiful in a sharp way, perfect hair, expensive perfume, and eyes that never stayed still for long. At their wedding, she hugged me politely and said, "I hope we can get along." I replied, "You are my daughter now." I meant it with all my heart. For the first year, things were fine. I lived alone in my small apartment, visited on Sundays, and cooked them food when they were busy. But then my health began to fail. My knees swelled, my hands trembled. I slipped months in the bathroom and lay on the floor for hours before a neighbor found me. Penick panicked. "Mom, you can't live alone anymore," he said. "Come live with us. We have a big house. You'll be safer." Caroline smiled thinly. "Yes, of course." I sold most of my furniture and packed my life into 2 old suitcases. I thought I was moving into love. I didn't know I was walking toward a prison. Their house stood on a quiet street with tall trees and clean sidewalks. It looked like a dream from the outside. 2 stories, white porch, wide windows. At first, Caroline tried. She called me Mom Lydia. She set a plate for me at dinner. She smiled when Ethan was watching. But when he left for work, her face changed. "You walk too slow. You leave crumbs. You don't understand how things work here." I tried to make myself small. I stayed in my room. I cleaned quietly. I prayed in whispers. I told myself, "Don't be a burden. Don't cause trouble. Be grateful." Ethan worked long hours and came home tired. I didn't want to worry him, so I stayed silent. One Monday morning, Ethan kissed my forehead and grabbed his suitcase. "I have a 3-day business trip," he said. "I'll be back Thursday night." I hugged him tightly. Caroline stood by the door, arms crossed. That night, she knocked on my bedroom door. "Lydia," she said coldly, "you need to move downstairs tonight." "Downstairs?" I asked. "My cousin is coming. She'll use your room." I hesitated. "The basement is cold and there's no bed." She rolled her eyes. "You'll survive one night." I didn't want conflict, so I followed her. The basement smelled of dust and damp walls.
One light bulb flickered like it was afraid of the dark. There was an old sofa with a thin blanket. "You sleep here," she said. Before I could speak, she shut the door behind me. Click. That sound echoed in my chest. "Caroline?" I called. "The door is locked." No answer. I pressed my ear to the door and heard her footsteps walking away. My heart began to pound like it wanted to break free. The first night, I did not sleep. The concrete floor was cold. The blanket smelled of mildew. I wrapped my coat around me and sat on the sofa. I whispered prayers. "God, I raised my son with love. Please don't let me die here." My stomach growled. My legs cramped. Every small sound felt like danger. In the morning, the door opened just a little. Caroline pushed in a plate with dry bread and a bottle of water. "You'll stay here until Ethan comes back," she said. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. She looked at me with no emotion. "You left the house last night. I'll tell Ethan you ran away. You're old, he'll believe me." My hands began to shake. "He is my son." She smiled. "And I am his wife." Then she locked the door again. Click. That sound became my nightmare. Time disappeared. I didn't know if it was day or night. There was no window, no phone, no clock, only darkness and fear. My voice grew weak from crying and praying. "Ethan, I didn't leave you." I pressed my face against the door. "My son thinks I abandoned me," I whispered to myself. "That's worse than dying." I thought about the nights I stayed up sewing his school uniform, the fevers I cooled with wet cloths, the lunches I packed with love. And now, I was nothing but a secret in a basement. On the second day, my legs began to swell. I could barely stand. My mouth tasted like metal. My hands trembled. Caroline came once more with food. "You can't do this," I weakly said. "God is watching." She laughed. "God doesn't live in basements." Then she left again. I curled up on the floor and cried like a child. By the third day, my voice was almost gone. I dragged myself across the floor until my fingers touched the small, high window near the ceiling. I saw light, and I heard a man whistling outside. "Hello?" I croaked. "Please help me." The whistling stopped. "What?" said a man. "I'm locked in. Please." He ran. Minutes later, sirens screamed into the street. The basement door was forced open. Light flooded in like heaven itself. A police officer wrapped a blanket around me. "Ma'am, you're safe now." I could barely speak. "My son thinks I ran away." When Ethan arrived, his face turned white. "Mom," he cried, "Caroline said you left." I touched his cheek. "I never left you." Behind him, Caroline stood silent, and the truth stood between us like broken glass. For 3 days, I have lived in darkness. Now, flashing police lights painted the walls blue and red, and neighbors stood outside whispering. I felt ashamed and relieved all at once. An officer wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. "Ma'am, you're safe now. We're taking you to the hospital." I nodded, though my head felt heavy and confused. But my heart was not thinking about pain or hunger. It was thinking about one thing only. My son believed I had left him. At the hospital, doctors checked my blood pressure and wrapped my swollen legs. They said I was dehydrated and weak, but alive. Alive. That word sounded holy. When the door opened, I saw Ethan. My son looked like a stranger. His eyes were red, his face was pale, his shoulders shook as he walked toward me. "Mom?" he whispered. I reached out with trembling hands. "I never left you," I said. "I was locked in." He fell to his knees beside my bed and held my hands. "She told me you ran away," he cried. "She said you were confused, that you didn't want to live with us anymore." Tears rolled down my cheeks. "I called your name every night," I said softly, "but you weren't there." He buried his face in my blanket. "I failed you," he sobbed. "I left you alone with her." Behind him, Caroline stood near the doorway. Her arms were crossed, her face was stiff. She did not look sorry, she looked angry that she had been caught. The police questioned her that same night. They asked about the locked door, about the food, about the lie. She said I was sick, that I imagined everything, that I wandered into the basement by myself, but the broken lock told another story. The old sofa, the empty water bottles, the thin blanket. Truth doesn't need many words. It just needs light. Ethan turned to her slowly. "You locked my mother in the basement?" She said nothing. He whispered, "Why?" Her voice was sharp. "She was ruining my life, always there, always watching. I needed space. She's my mother, and I am your wife. You chose her over me." His voice cracked. "No, I chose the truth." That night, Ethan did not go home. He stayed beside my hospital bed, holding my hand like he did when he was 5 years old. "I thought you left me," he kept saying. "I thought I lost you." I never would, not in this life. The next morning, he packed a bag and returned to the house only once. He came back with my suitcase and my Bible. He said, "I'm taking you somewhere safe." I did not argue. We drove in silence. The house on Maple Street disappeared in the mirror, and with it, my old life. We stayed at a small motel near the highway. The room smelled like soap and coffee. It was not fancy, but it had a lock I controlled. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, his face in his hands. "I trusted her," he said. "I brought you into danger." I touched his shoulder. "You didn't know," I said. "Love can make us blind." Days passed. Caroline sent messages, angry ones, threatening ones, then silent ones. Ethan filed a police report. Neighbors spoke, whispers spread, and Caroline's perfect image shattered. I moved into a small senior apartment with sunlight in every room. Yellow curtains, white walls, a chair by the window. For the first time in months, I felt human again. Ethan visited every evening after work. Sometimes we cried. Sometimes we sat quietly. Sometimes we just held hands. One night he said, "Mom, will you forgive me?" I looked at his tired face and saw the little boy who once held my finger crossing the street. "I already have," I said, but something inside me still hurt, not because of him, because of betrayal. At church, people hugged me. They said, "You're strong," but I didn't feel strong. I felt old. I felt fragile, and I felt a weight. I had learned something too late in life. Not all family loves you the same way you love them. One afternoon, Caroline appeared at my door. She looked smaller. Her hair was messy. Her eyes were dark. "She didn't mean for it to go that far. I just needed you gone." I stood in the doorway with my Bible in my hand. "You locked me in darkness. You told my son I abandoned you." She said nothing. God sees everything, and so do I. She turned and walked away, and I never saw her again. Ethan filed for divorce. The house on Maple Street was sold, and I started a new life at 69 years old. I planted flowers on my windowsill. I learned to drink tea instead of fear, and every night before sleep, I whispered, "I am safe. I am still loved." But the story was not finished, because healing is not instant, and trust is not easy. Sometimes I still dream of the basement, the dark, the click of the lock, the lie that my son believed. I wake up shaking. Then I see sunlight through my window, and I breathe again. One Sunday, Ethan came with flowers. He said, "I want you to come live with me again someday, when you're ready." I looked at him. "Not yet," I said gently. "First, I must learn to live for myself." He nodded. "I understand." I had survived, but now I needed to learn to live, not as a prisoner, not as a burden, but as a woman who still had dignity. After everything that happened, people expected me to return to my old life. They thought once Caroline was gone, once the truth was known, everything would become normal again. But nothing was normal anymore. When you have tasted fear, when you have heard a lock close behind you, when your own child believes you abandoned him, your heart does not return to the way it was before. It changes shape. And I had to learn how to live inside this new heart. My days in the senior apartment became quiet and slow. I woke up with the sun, I made tea, I watered my small plants by the window. Neighbors waved at me, some asked about my past. I never told them everything. How do you explain that the person who once called you mom locked you away like an object? Some pain is too heavy for conversation. But at night, when the lights were off, memories came. The sound of the basement door closing, the smell of dust and damp walls, the echo of my own voice calling Ethan's name. Sometimes I woke up crying. Other times I woke up angry. And sometimes I woke up grateful I was still alive. Ethan visited every Sunday. He brought groceries, he fixed my broken lamp, he sat beside me and tried to make jokes. But there was something broken in his eyes. Guilt lived there now. One afternoon, he said, "Mom, I don't think I deserve you." I looked at him carefully. "You deserve truth," I said, "and you deserve to learn from it." He lowered his head. I should have listened. I should have seen. Love can make us blind, but pain makes us awake. Months passed. Caroline never returned. The divorce papers were finalized quietly. The house on Maple Street was sold. Ethan moved into a small apartment near my building. He wanted to be close, but not too close. He said, "I need to learn how to be your son again." And I needed to learn how to be more than just his mother. One day, the manager of the senior center knocked on my door. "We need someone to help with storytelling group. You have a strong voice. Would you like to join?" I almost said no. Fear still lived inside me, but something whispered, "Try." So I went. The room was full of old faces and tired eyes. A woman spoke about losing her husband. A man spoke about losing his home. Another woman spoke about being forgotten by her children. And then they looked at me. I stood slowly. My name is Lydia Grant, and I was locked in a basement by someone I trusted. The room went silent. For the first time, I told the truth out loud, about the cold, about the lies, about my son believing I had left him. When I finished, an old man wiped his eyes. "You survived," he said. "Yes," I whispered, "I did." From that day on, I spoke every week. My pain became my voice, my fear became my story, and my story became someone else's courage. One evening, Ethan came to visit me with a serious face. He said, "I saw Caroline today." My heart tightened. "Where?" "At the grocery store. She looked different." I said nothing. "She said she wanted to talk to you." Silence filled the room. I thought of the basement, the lock, the lie. "Does she want forgiveness?" I asked. She said she wants closure. I stood and walked to the window. For months, I had carried anger like a stone in my chest. But now it felt heavy. "I will meet her," I said. Ethan looked shocked. "Mom, you don't have to." "I do," I replied, "for myself." We met at a small cafe. Caroline looked older, smaller, broken. She did not wear expensive perfume anymore. "I didn't think you'd come," she said. "I came for me," I answered. She looked down at her hands. "I was jealous. You had his love. I felt invisible." "You made me invisible," I said quietly. Tears fell from her eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you that way." "But you did," I said. She nodded. "I lost everything because of what I did." I looked at her for a long time. I lost my safety. I lost my home. I lost my peace. We sat in silence. Then I said, "I forgive you." Her head lifted in shock. "But forgiveness does not mean forgetting, and it does not mean you come back into my life." She whispered, "Thank you." I stood. "Go find your own healing. This is mine." And I walked away. That night, I slept without dreaming of the basement. For the first time in a long time, my heart felt light. Ethan cried when I told him. "You're stronger than me," he said. "No, I'm freer than I was." Spring came. Flowers bloomed outside my window. Children played in the courtyard. I planted tomatoes in a small pot, and every morning I said to myself, "I survived. I matter. I am still here." One Sunday, Ethan took my hand and said, "Mom, will you come live with me again someday?" I looked at him. This time, I didn't feel fear. "I will visit," I said, "but I will keep my own place." He smiled. "That's fair." At the senior center, they asked me to help start a support group for abused elders. I called it Voices in the Light. We met every week. We talked, we cried, we healed. One woman said, "Your story saved me." I realized then that my basement had become a doorway to purpose. On my 70th birthday, Ethan brought a cake. It had one candle for every year. He hugged me and whispered, "I will never leave you again." I kissed his cheek. "And I will never disappear again," I said. Now, when I lock my door at night, I do it by choice, not from fear, not from punishment, but from peace. I sit by my window and watch the moon, and I whisper a prayer. Thank you, God, for opening the door when humans closed it. I was once a woman in darkness. Now I'm a woman in light. My daughter-in-law locked me in a basement. My son thought I ran away, but the truth found its voice, and so did I. Final message. If you are listening to this story and feel invisible, if you feel forgotten, if someone has locked you in silence, remember this. Doors can be opened, truth can be spoken, and even in old age, life can begin again. Sometimes the deepest wounds come from the people we love the most. But even in the darkest places, truth finds a way to the light. If this story touched your heart, remember this. No one deserves to be locked away in silence. No mother deserves to be forgotten. And no pain lasts forever when courage speaks. May this story remind you to protect those who raised you, to listen before judging, and to never turn your back on someone who only wanted to be loved. Thank you for listening. Until next time, keep your heart open and your light shining. Hi, this is Molly, and if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for upcoming stories. Take care. Bye-bye.